Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. So continuing with our readings around the subject of the 8 thoughts of a great being. Got a nice perspective from Luang Pa last night on that, kind of a repetition of the sutta itself, but I'll just go ahead and, even though we heard it last night, mention it one more time just for this particular section, which we're starting on mindfulness. And the kind of more detailed explanation a little bit later in the sutta around mindfulness is, when it was said, this Dhamma is for one with mindfulness established, not for one who is muddle-minded, with reference to what was this said. Here, a bhikkhu is mindful, possessing supreme mindfulness and alertness, one who remembers and recollects what was done and said long ago. When it was said, this Dhamma is for one with mindfulness established, not for one who is muddle-minded, it is with reference to this that this was said. Okay. So for my reading this round, it's one that I read some time ago, but actually all the members on our little group here, the 4 of us, none of the other 3 remembered that it was read, so maybe they weren't here, or maybe I made it all up in my head. But it's this article, or this essay, I guess you'd call it, from Ajahn Sucitto, called Mindfulness, Its Friends and Relatives. And I thought it would be a good, useful way to open this. There's so much that could be done with the topic of sati. In fact, we could probably spend the whole retreat just on that. So it's kind of hard to find selections that seem to be relevant for a short survey over 4 days. And I thought this one was nice because it kind of addresses some of the current understandings and maybe possibly misunderstandings of the use of the word mindfulness, and then goes into some what I think are just very useful descriptions, definitions of mindfulness and, as Ajahn Sucitto calls it, its friends and its relatives, what goes along with mindfulness practice. What does mindfulness mean? The term mindfulness, sati, has become a buzzword in recent years. We hear of mindfulness being used in many ways to increase calm, to rectify attention disorders, and to offer emotional stability. It is employed in a number of ways: mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, mindfulness-based childbirth, mindfulness for sports people, mindfulness for businessmen, mindfulness in the military. A calm, collected emotional state and a clear present moment attention can have many applications to improve how a human being functions. And mindfulness is commonly understood to provide just that. In terms of its popularity, in the West at least, it has outgrown and often doesn't even acknowledge its ancient Buddhist parent with all her religious mannerisms. Understandably so. Recent accounts of Buddhist fundamentalist attacks on Muslims in Burma and Sri Lanka offer a deeply disappointing vision of how even Buddhism can get swamped by views. But what is mindfulness? Is it a technique of noting, a moment at a time, phenomena that arise with an unwaveringly focused attention? Finding the rigor of this approach too rigid and stressful, some teachers have espoused a less object-centered approach of tuning into awareness itself, an approach that is backed up in Tibetan Dzogchen practice or in Advaita Vedanta, but which finds less secure ground in the Pali texts of Theravada. So this can be confusing for people who are approaching mindfulness through the Pali canon. One problem seems to be that of taking the method through which mindfulness is applied microscopically, a method taught by acknowledged masters, such as the Mahasi Sayadaw and Sayadaw U Pandita, and a foundation for Goenka and Western Vipassana teachers, to be mindfulness itself. But to swing the other way and to say mindfulness is just about being aware in the present seems to miss a salient feature of what the texts and the practice are about. Mindfulness entails more than being choicelessly aware in the present moment. Take, for example, quote from the Majjhima Nikaya, "He possesses the highest mindfulness and skill. He recollects and remembers what was done long ago and spoken long ago." Here, the mindful practitioner, keen to follow the teachings, brings them to mind to act as a frame of reference of his or her present experience. So mindfulness has a referential quality. It connects present moment experience to a frame of reference. The teachings on the four establishments or bases of mindfulness exemplify this. Mindfulness of body, feeling, mind state, and mental qualities in the establishment of mindful discourses, Majjhima 10 and Digha 22, is a referential practice. In these suttas, mindfulness is the kind of attention that refers bodily experience to the body, feeling to the realm of feeling, the current state of mind to the domain of mind, and mental qualities, potentials such as ill will or goodwill that support mind states, to themselves, just as they are. Why? Because in this way, which is called the direct path for the disappearance of pain and grief, for the realization of nibbana, one isn't referring them to, quote, myself, or how I should look, or why is my mind in this state, and so on. Nor is one distracting oneself, spacing out, or suppressing mind states. This reference, bare or judgment and self-representation, is of course at the heart of mindfulness as a therapeutic tool. It clears out the misreference of judgment, of feeling bad about one's body and so on, which always adds some self-bias in its assessments. In the practice of the four establishments, mindfulness replaces that tension and reactivity with clarity and calm. That steady calm allows mind states to unravel to the great unbinding of nibbana. Right view, virtue, and attention. Reference to an object in and of itself is then part of what mindfulness offers. But in mindfulness as a factor for liberation, there's more to it than that. The texts present mindfulness as being accompanied by other factors. I call them friends and relatives. Some or all of whom tag along with mindfulness so that motivation and application is clear, and that there is a learning from what the frame of reference presents. For instance, take mindfulness in the Eightfold Path. It's only one factor of an unfolding process which begins with right view and leads on through right speech and right action, through right mindfulness and into samadhi, right unification of mind. In this process, the most important factor is right view, the wise perspective that reminds us that everything we say, do, or even think has results, for good or for bad. This view is the basis and the motivation behind cultivating one's life. Quote, there is the result of good and bad deeds. Unquote. Right view affirms that we can enter on a good way through being fully and responsibly conscious. It motivates us to pay attention. Mindfulness then carries right view into living experience by highlighting the mind states that are the causes and results of our actions. It gets the mind to see which ones are for our true benefit. Then in terms of attention, there are teachings such as, quote, when your virtue is well purified and your view is straight, based upon virtue, established upon virtue, you should develop the four establishments of mindfulness. That's from the Sangha 47. The act of paying attention is qualified. This instruction isn't about merely noting an object. The requirement to establish virtue and awareness of the causes and effects of one's actions indicate that in Dhamma practice, it's not enough to notice that one's body is doing something and sensations are arising, but how and why. Robbing a bank or slaughtering a chicken might require clarity, focus, and calm, but they wouldn't be themes for right mindfulness. Parentheses, although there is such a thing as wrong, miccha mindfulness. Because they don't reveal the accompanying mental quality, in this case, the qualities of avarice, shamelessness, and harmfulness. So, for right mindfulness, the attentive aspect of mind has to connect with felt awareness of one's approach and intention. This is because taken on its own, attention is amoral. Assassins can cultivate it to a high degree. But attention is not mindfulness. Attention, manasikara, is the aspect of mind that is operating through manas, mind as rational, object-defining tool. This is the function that gets tuned to high degrees of efficiency and speed. People racing through piles of data, people rapidly trading stocks and shares, people behind screens, scanning and taking notes, have high degrees of attention and rapid reference. But what they're not referring to is their own awareness, mind as heart, or citta. Clear comprehension and deep attention. Citta is the mind of feelings and impressions, and of, quote, how I am. Mind as an empathic awareness. It is the all-important focus of mindfulness, because if it is steadied and cleared of wrong views and unknowing, there is liberation. So mindfulness refers the objects of attention to this mental awareness, or heart, to know what it is being affected by, and how that affect arises and passes. This knowledge is called clear comprehension, or full knowing, sampajanya. It is a vital relative of mindfulness, one that gives it a crucial role in mind cultivation, and in fact, in our well-being. Through lack of the knowing that arises through mindful reference to citta, people lose themselves in what grabs attention or get stressed out. In both cases, they lose full contact with their awareness, even to the extent of not knowing that in that a steady basis is available. Therefore, we have rampant social and individual disease, anxiety, stress, and depression, because our systems and cultures have lost touch with awareness and the ease that is its fundamental nature. Instead, the message is that happiness and success only come through chasing and acquiring what's out there, all of which agitates the citta. And the scenario out there is that as soon as you get and become something, then that's out of date, so get a new one and develop a bit more. This is the world of surface, of which the touch screen is the icon. Contact is instant, glassy, and lacking depth. You just bounce from one thing to the next. In such a scenario, there's no inner home, just a center that remains swampy, hungry, and restless. That's why right mindfulness is vital. If there is one life-saving feature that I'd say mindfulness is about, is that it connects manas, the object definer, to citta, awareness, the subjective sense. Mindfulness is there in the moment of holding the question, how am I with this? If we liken the mind to a hand, attention is like the fingers, and citta is like the palm. Fingers can probe, twiddle, and touch, but are unable to collect anything. The palm can't probe and inquire, but it receives, collects, and fully feels what the fingers place in it. So citta has a storekeeper's wisdom. It wants to know what is worth being in touch with, what can be held for one's welfare. It certainly needs educating, and that is the function of deep or wise attention, yoniso manasikara. The attention that selects which sense data mindfulness should bear in mind. There's a huge amount of stuff that the mind can potentially linger in or get lost in. So deep attention is another friend of mindfulness. It requires skillful intention and clarifies what you're experiencing. Deep attention means that rather than note every thought that runs through your head, you get to the point. What is the overall trend here in one word? Restlessness, anxiety, irritation, friendliness. Then mindfulness bears that mind state in mind, lets it sit in awareness. So, when right view and deep attention guide mindfulness, it draws manas and citta together. You know where your actions and thoughts are coming from. You're ethically attuned. If deep attention prepares the ground for mindfulness, clear comprehension, or full knowing, helps you to more fully meet and come to terms with what you are experiencing. For example, as you attend to how your body feels and how you sense it internally, you establish mindfulness of body. By directing your attention to how your body feels in itself, you establish the embodied sense that gets you grounded and stable. You more fully get to know what the body is about. It's not just a visual object that you compare with others or worry about. With clear comprehension, you know it not as a self-image, but as a base of consciousness and a resource for the mind. That replaces a source of anxiety and passion with something you can use to notice and understand how you're being affected. Because as you get embodied, feeling, both physical and mental, becomes more evident. Then if you attend to feeling in itself without rejecting, resisting, or sinking into it, you're mindful of how agreeable and disagreeable mental feeling both change. Clear comprehension makes you less reactive. Consequently, as the mind state of complaining or exaggerating or fascination is no longer supported, it too passes. The mind is clear. The mind is left clear and balanced. There's another life changer. You don't have to feel cheerful and bright all the time. And when the mind is low, you don't have to make a person out of it. Through mindfulness and full knowing of mental feelings and states, their true nature is revealed. They're not a self, not fixed things at all. If you get to fully know the mind, you know it goes through moods, but they change, and you can arrive at clarity. Samadhi and wisdom. So this reference and the full knowing that it supports opens and clarifies the heart. As the various reactions and distractions die down, the fingers of attention and the palm of awareness can meet with no aim and object other than that meeting. Then you have samadhi. The mind is unified. Through mindfulness, attention comes home to awareness. And finding that this is a very comfortable place to be, intention settles into appreciation and ease. But of greater significance in the long run, mindfulness is involved with wisdom. It may be correct to say that mindfulness is non-judgmental, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't support assessment. It is in the putting aside self-judgments and short-term impulses that an assessment of what is really useful can take place. He quotes covetousness and grief regarding the world in relation to short-term impulses. So to avoid having its attention hijacked, mindfulness has to be established and made firm. One image is of a man carrying a bowl of oil on his head, with another walking behind him with a sword ready to cut off his head if he spills a drop. If even, to paraphrase the Buddha, the most beautiful girl in the world sings and dances in front of him, would he give her any attention? No, his mindfulness is firmly established on balance, the key to clear assessment of what is really needed or true in any situation. It's fortunate that this head-lopping technique is not offered in meditation retreats. Instead, we make our way supported by the energy of patient persistence, the ability to keep beginning again without getting sidetracked by self-criticism or doubt. Mindfulness has to be established and reestablished through patience and a lot of kind encouragement so that the fingers of attention don't keep grabbing hot coal. Knowing what burns or stabs the heart or entangles it with no benefit is up to each of us to find out. But to keep that patient persistence going, mindfulness needs enthusiasm or eagerness. In this way, persistence, virya, and eagerness, atapi, become two more members of the mindfulness team. They're important assets in their own right. People get put off by the idea of making an effort, but right energy comes from interest and fullness of heart, not blind will. When you feel obliged to work at things that are not meaningful, effort is tiresome and difficult to sustain. But when something gives us good results or is interesting to do, then energy is not a problem. So we need to recall and be mindful of why we do what we do, whether that's cultivating samadhi or cooking. Keep it relevant. Get interested in how your mind or body work. Use mindfulness with interest. Then the application of right effort is a way of coming more fully into your life. It takes mindfulness to ride a bike, and to do so reliably and well in any weather requires persistence. So with mindfulness, you learn how to know and how to support your body and to train, encourage, gladden, and soothe the mind in a range of activities. Right effort and right mindfulness give rise to a pragmatic wisdom that makes a decade of persistence worthwhile. But they're also about the present with immediate results, to be more fully and knowingly here. What else is mindfulness about than that? Transcendence, that's what. In another parable, Samyutta Nikaya 47, the Buddha presents the examples of two cooks. Both present their master, the king, with his meal, but one does and one doesn't notice what food the king enjoys. The one who doesn't notice serves the same food every day, regardless, and gets fired. The one who notices what food the king chooses from the meal continues to refine the meal he prepares in line with what most satisfies his master, and gets promoted. The parable then likens these to the way that two bhikkhus, who are both described as being mindful and clearly comprehending, present a meditation theme to their minds. Of the two, the foolish, incompetent bhikkhu doesn't know how his mind responds, so he gets no good results. But the wise, competent bhikkhu takes note, and his corruptions are abandoned. This makes the point that mindfulness needs to attend to, quote, the sign of the mind. This is beautiful. As it clears itself of its burdens and inner conflicts, the citta will present subtle signs of luminosity, ease, vastness, or stillness. Any of these may be a key to be picked up, held, and explored. So we need to look and feel more deeply to what meditation theme it picks up readily and enjoys, rather than keep blindly plugging away. Picking up the sign of the mind is the entry to the mystical experience, when the heart attunes to a felt sense that isn't coming from one's normal personality programs. The required fine-tuning comes through another of mindfulness's friends, one that tastes the mental qualities that support any state of mind. This is called investigation of qualities, Dhammavichaya. It has to be applied to the citta as in, what effect is this having on my mind? Or, what is there at the periphery of attention? Sometimes through tunnel vision, we miss the most important messages that the citta is telling us, like, I'm pinched and pressurized, or, it's time to just enjoy this. The spirit of investigation encourages us to assess the mind at any time. For example, can my mind find focus on this aspect of breathing, or does it settle more readily while walking? Or is this the time when kindness is a more suitable place in which to dwell? Through investigation, the corruptions of forcefulness, ambition, or our ideas about what we should be experiencing get weeded out. They are replaced by a more subtle invitation into truth. In this way, citta educates manas in the ways of directly experienced wisdom. And manas pays back by casting that wisdom into concepts that form the storehouse of one's contemplative know-how. Without mindful reference, awakening, wisdom, and even genuine kindness are just concepts and ideals that remain out of reach. And without its supportive companions, mindfulness doesn't penetrate much deeper than granting an improved quality of attention. On the other hand, as a member of a team, mindfulness frees the mind from the burden of self-consciousness, self-hatred, and self-orientation, the shift that is the heart of awakening. Sometimes it's the case that practitioners cultivate this team naturally. You don't need to know all their names. But when the mind is like a hand, you do need to consider what you're picking up, whether you're pushing, stroking, or grabbing, and how to turn things over with curiosity. It's up to you. For some, it may, as with Hatha Yoga, become another commodity that improves people's capacity to work on the same treadmill as before. For others, it will bring fresh life to its forgetful Buddhist parent. And for others, it's an open opportunity. Eventually, how we use it is our own ongoing responsibility. So there's a lot there to unpack. Covers a wide variety of bases, but I thought with quite a refreshing perspective on how these factors interrelate, intermingle, and support each other. Are there any thoughts or comments or questions?
Do you remember how the Buddha defines wrong mindfulness?
Miccha sati. Actually, I don't remember reading any particular phrase. Is there a... Oh, in this one?
In parentheses, he says...
How he defined... Did he actually...
Yeah.
Does anybody remember what I read?
He just says that wrong mindfulness exists.
Oh, yeah. No. I know the reference, but I don't know of a reference of exactly how the Buddha would define it, if anybody else.
There's some sort of word, like it's like he over meditates, mismeditates, under meditates, something like that, and then that's like what wrong samadhi.
Yeah, I mean that same. It's like right mindfulness is the four foundations of mindfulness, but then wrong mindfulness is like mindfulness based in the defilements, like where you're actually taking the object of your desire as the object of mindfulness, or the.
Right, yeah, that's how I understand it as well. I just didn't know if there was an exact pseudo-reference that anybody particularly remembers, or... Yeah.
So
You think you got one in mind?
Has a phrase like he absorbs, resorbs, besorbs, supersorbs into it.
Research is happening. Yeah, I can think of more references in relation to like Miccha Samadhi, but not Miccha Sati. While the research is happening, is there any other thoughts, questions?
There's a lot of teachings on what mindfulness does and how to use it, but I still, it's like the actual definition. I've only come across one definition, and that's actually out of Jeff's. But like the ability to remember what leads to wholesome and unwholesome based on one's own experience and the teachings. Because even in that whole paper, there's not actually a definition of mindfulness, is there? It's like such a broad term that
Yeah.
defines it. It's very,
Yeah.
it's kind of frustrating for me because I'm like,
And even what you just said, Ajahn Jeff said to me has, some qualifications to it, like that, right mindfulness as opposed to a broader term of general, mindfulness that would include wrong mindfulness.
yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. But I also like it seems to mesh well with the Buddha's analogy of the guardsman at the gate,
Yeah.
deciding which guest to let in. It's sort of like,
Yeah.
You remember which guest is good to let in from your own experience, and maybe you have the list of like,
Right.
The most wanted, America's most wanted, and
Right.
that's like the teachings, who to let in, who not. But
Yeah, and that's what
should actually come across like a definition.
definition. Yeah, it's almost something that a definition takes about 8 pages to to define. It's not something that's easily done in a line. But what you're saying, I think, also reports back to what Ajahn Sucitto was saying, that it's actually a quality that is essential, is its referential quality. That it actually refers to something. It's not just like a blank mental fact or like attention or holding or openness, whatever. It's not just a bare mental factor or technique or tool. It actually remembers. The quality of remembering is very important. It remembers to refer the experience to at least right mindfulness, to a particular frame of reference. What is it that I'm trying to look at, and how am I looking at it, and how do I hold it in regard to the other factors of the path? So that it actually becomes something that's useful as a tool for liberation. Yeah. Got something? Nope.
Yes, and I didn't recall there would be any. Upon perusal, right now, all the references to wrong mindfulness I can find are just in a list of the wrong Eightfold Path.
Right.
And they're just listed.
Not.
None of the other factors are really defined in any specific way.
Right. Okay. Well, keep our eyes open.
I think in terms of a definition, a short definition for mindfulness, I would say mindfulness is like the brakes that you apply when, say, there's this phrase, establishing mindfulness. So it's like coming back to what am I doing right now, followed by what's the proper wholesome course of action in any given moment, based on coming back to the present and checking in with what state am I in right now. I think that would be like a...
Yeah, it's actually a function, it seems like, that weaves a number of different activities and qualities together into a unit of experience that helps support the development of calm and wisdom.
I'll read it in a couple of days, but Ajahn Jeff, at least, I'm not completely sure what his source is, but he tells the story of the first translator of the Mahasatipatthana Sutta, I guess, forget the name, we'll read it, but that there wasn't, the function of sati didn't have a good word in the English language. And so he came up, there was mindful, there was mindful, the adjective, and then he made that into a noun.
Mindfulness.
Mindfulness.
Was that Rhys Davids?
Yeah, I think either Rhys Davids or Woodward, I've forgotten.
I think it was Rhys Davids.
Rhys Davids.
Yeah.
And but then Ajahn Jeff actually approves of that, and even cites there's a, I guess, he thinks that the translator may have taken it from an Anglican prayer. May we be, may we be ever mindful of the needs of others. which just actually, describes that sense of, referential attention fairly well.
Right. And mindful being full of mind, in a sense.
Keeping
Fullness in the mind, fullness with the mind.